So today, we are talking about the Umbrella Academy, and specifically, how the Umbrella Academy handles escalation. Now, if you don't know anything about the Umbrella Academy, it has a 4-season show on Netflix. It started back in 2019, so it's been playing for like 5 years now. Finally finished up this past August, which is great, with a final 4th season that was cut short to 6 episodes rather than a full 10. The main gimmick of the series is that a bunch of women got mysteriously pregnant one day and gave birth to children over the course of a single day. Basically, they gave birth to children despite not being pregnant when they woke up. And those children had superpowers, and this rich old billionaire took them in as like an X-Force team. But then it all fell apart as they grew older, and they hated each other. And now they're basically washed-up child stars, but superheroes. There's a comic it's based on that's a little bit different. I've only actually read the first part. That is volume 1. It's much more into the classic superhero, costume and stuff like that, whereas this is more into a grounded superhero, but in the tone rather than just making all the stuff normal and boring. Trust me, the time-traveling assassins wearing mascot masks shooting up the lobby made it very clear that this is a ridiculous show by its premise. However, I like the Umbrella Academy for a lot of reasons. It has a good sense of humor, the characters are all kind of various forms of fucked up and trying to get better, and failing miserably half the time. The dialogue is well written, the actor's all really good at it. They actually found a good child actor to play the eternally youthful Five. He's a time-traveling assassin who was originally a member of their group who could teleport, but tried to do time travel, got stuck in a post-apocalyptic future, and when he finally got back to try and stop that apocalypse, he managed to get trapped in like an 11-year-old state forever, so he's essentially a murderous 80-year-old assassin who time-traveled, but he looks like an 11-year-old child, and the kid who plays him is really good at it. I really liked it. And that actually brings me to the main thing with Umbrella Academy. See, Umbrella Academy is the show where the world is always ending, and it's always the main character's fault somehow. The show starts with the world ending because the moon got destroyed and fell onto the planet, and it's really revealed that the 7th member, the one who supposedly didn't have powers, but she did, but she was really powerful and scared their dad, so he made her think she didn't have powers and brainwashed her using one of the other ones who can, manipulate reality. It's a long story. Long story short, she can control vibrations to the point of literally blasting a moon out of the sky. And she does, even though they try and stop it. Because Five didn't actually know how the world ended, he just knew it ended on this date and managed to get back about a week beforehand. Then they travel back to the 1960s and get caught up in the Reagan assassination, and they cause another nuclear war for which Five has to travel back another week and try and convince them all to not do whatever it is they do that in the world. In the process, they also change history and get their father to adopt other kids, so when they get back to the future, there's a different superhero team called the Sparrow Academy who are much better than them, and have their old deceased 6th member who died in their timeline and therefore wasn't around to give a bad impression to their dad. Also, they died, so the fact that they're also here right now means that, well, grandfather paradox is unraveling reality, the world's gonna end again, it's all their fault. Then, they get tricked by their dad, who's alive in this timeline, not dead, and he tries to create a new perfect timeline by nearly killing them. They get depowered and go off and live their own lives for a few years before they get their powers back, because Ben, who's still a salty asshole because he's from the new timeline, doesn't like any of them, is a bit of an a-hole, nearly sets the world in motion again by giving them back their powers and getting in contact with this girl who, if she bonds with someone, will cause the end of the world for real this time, and is also a byproduct of the super weapon Hargreaves used to both revive his wife and create them by as a byproduct. He was trying to stop her from ever coming into contact with anyone else who was born from the super weapon, because if they do, they're gonna bond, create a Kira monster, and destroy the world. Now, I just described a very convoluted plot in the most basic terms possible, trust me, there's a lot more to it, about how the world nearly ends 4 times involving time travel, super weapons, aliens, and just a general lack of sanity. So, if you didn't get all that, rewind and listen to it again. I'm sorry, but I have to be condensed about this, and trust me, I didn't even start on like a 1/4 of the stuff that happens in this show. Also, in case you didn't get from the whole washed up child star but superheroes angle, yeah, all the characters are a little messed up from their childhood. There's this one clip by Klaus, he can see dead people and is now a drug addict and describes the characters very well. So I'm just gonna play that instead of describing them for you.
I think I'll take it up a notch, shall we? I mean, dysfunction is, after all, what we do best in this family. We got daddy issues, chaos junkie. Mommy issues, more daddy issues, obnoxious asshole issues. Then you seem kind of weirdly self-actualized as far as I can tell. Anyway.
There we go. Did you get that? Good. That's basically what you need to know about them. Now I need you to hold on while I explain one last thing, before we get to how this show handles escalation. So Hargreaves is an alien. This was hinted throughout the series, in case you think it's a spoiler. It's not just a season 4 thing, they hinted it throughout the whole show. It isn't a retcon, it's from the original comic. Long story short, the world's ending, and it's revealed his wife was the one who created the cult and sent this all in motion. And it's revealed the reason is that this is inevitable. The moment Hargreaves used the weapon, this was always going to happen. So long as anyone touched by the Marigold exists, the world will continue to end, because that's what it's designed to do. The Marigold is essentially a self-fulfilling prophecy. Unless every person with it was never born, the world will end. It's just a matter of time, and it will end sooner rather than later. So how does this relate to escalation? Well, the thing with the Umbrella Academy is that the best way to describe it is that the world is always ending. The show is about preventing the apocalypse. In the first season, they're trying to stop Vanya from destroying the moon, but because she's their family, they don't take the shot, and as a result, their attempts to snap her awake and get her out of this weird murder trance just causes her to blast the moon out of the sky, causing the apocalypse. Now, they flee back to the 1960s to try and stop it from happening, but guess what? They cause a nuclear war and have to fix that, and in the process of fixing that, they change history, and then they end up dead, but they're in the future, so grandfather paradox is destroying the world. Do you see the pattern? Every time they try and save the world, they make it worse. First, it's just a massive debris field falling upon the Earth. And 5 only explored the US. He says nobody survived, and the Time Organization did too. But it's possible some people survived like he did, maybe, that were on the other side of the planet. It's not likely, but there are probably a handful of other survivors out there somewhere. He just had trouble finding them. Next up, we have a nuclear apocalypse. No one survived that, but hey, Hargreaves is an alien. That proves there are other aliens out there. Maybe other life survived somewhere. Then they unraveled the goddamn universe, and no one's surviving that. So every time they try and stop or make the world better, it gets worse. The escalation in a show is usually about the escalation of threats. You know, you stop the small town villain, then you go defeat a corrupt official in a city, then you stop an evil tyrant, and then maybe a galactic emperor descends on the world. You have a steady rising of these threats as the characters get stronger and more experienced. The Umbrella Academy has pretty powerful characters. You have someone who can change reality by saying, I heard a rumor. You have a guy who can talk to the dead and regularly chats with God. You have a bunch of really absurd abilities. But when it comes down to it, their existence, their powers are what are causing the problems. And so their attempts to fix them without sacrifice, without killing each other. The only reason their world survived as long as it did in the original time was because Hargreaves just freaking offed Ben the second these Marigold things started activating. And unless they're willing to die, they can't. And they're unwilling to sacrifice each other because they're family and they want to live together. And 5 comes to the realization this is what happens. This has been happening forever. The original timeline was when a version of himself condensed all the multiverse into a single output, because none of the versions of him could figure out an alternate timeline where they succeeded. So instead, he created one timeline where they failed, but things mostly worked out. When Fives realizes this, when he realizes he's just repeating the same mistake over and over again, he chooses a different path. He realizes that so long as they exist, everyone they loved, everyone they cared for, everyone in the universe will continue to suffer an endless cascade of death. And the only way to stop the end of the world, to finally end all of this, is to make sure they don't exist. So he uses his powers and the permission of his siblings, who he has to convince that they just need to die. They have to stop existing. And they do. And the world is safe. The final shot is this beautiful little scene of just a bunch of people playing in a park. And you can recognize people from throughout the series. And this is the timeline where they're happy. Because the siblings didn't exist. The Umbrella Academy didn't exist. Because the Marigold was never used. And under the tree are a group of flowers. Marigold flowers. It's a beautiful use of escalation to show the characters the ramifications of their own actions. Unlike escalation in a lot of other shows, this is not an external force constantly acting upon this. This isn't a demon inside their guts, or a monster, or some other universal threat. This is the nature of their own existence, and the refusal to accept that leads to grander and grander tragedies, and the only way to create a world without those tragedies is for them to not exist themselves. Which is tragic. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Umbrella Academy as a whole. It's a tragic philosophical question of what would you do to save the world if you were the reason it kept ending? And I think that was a very interesting way to go through it. Like I said, the characters are all enjoyable, and I would highly recommend that anyone who's interested in this show definitely check it out. It's well worth your time. I know there were some controversies regarding Vanya/Victor and some of the other choices the show made, so I decided to go more video essay than review. Do you guys like this, or do you prefer my new review style instead? Let me know. I am actually trying to figure out a new directions for the channel, new things I can talk about, so I'm really eager to hear what you guys have to say about that. Now we also have the announcements. So I am streaming, I got a new game recommended to me actually, Draken, thanks to Nerdo Dragon, who actually posted in the small little thread I have for media recommendations. If you guys ever want to recommend me something to review or to play on my stream, hey, go ahead and do it on the Discord channel. There should be a link in the description below. I actually do really want to hear what you guys want me to review and want me to talk about. I'm always happy to find new franchises. So seriously, thanks for that, Nerd Dragon, and we will be streaming that. Probably already start streaming that by the time this comes out, actually. Finally, we have the out card. There's a subscribe board. Click on it, go to my channel, and subscribe. I really appreciate that. There's also a video YouTube recommends, and I will see you all next time. Bye!